As Suleiman watched the guards change stations before him, his mind drifted to a momentous victory on the Mohacs Plain. That battle had been significant not just for its military success, but for an entirely different reason as well. Before setting out on the campaign, an envoy had arrived from the court of France, sent by none other than the Queen Mother. The envoy had fallen to one knee, pleading for Ottoman intervention against Charles, that Spanish prince who had captured her son, the King of France, during one of the never-ending Italian wars. This request had pleased Suleiman, for it aligned perfectly with his own ambitions. He had already set his sights on Hungary, and this plea from France meant that his conquest would not only serve the interests of his empire, but also forge an invaluable connection within the complex web of European politics. This was a rare opportunity. Historically, his predecessors had always been adversaries to the European world, locked in an endless struggle against the Christian kingdoms. But he knew that if he truly desired to expand his influence in Europe, he would need allies within it. This request from the French Queen Mother was a doorway into that world. However, the next envoy to arrive after the victory at Mohacs was not one of friendship. It came from Ferdinand, the other Habsburg, to whom Charles had granted his Austrian lands so that he could focus on his vast Spanish empire. No sooner had Ottoman forces pulled back from Hungary than Ferdinand had swept in, seeking to claim the territory as his own. His envoys arrived in Istanbul, presenting what they claimed to be overtures of peace. In reality, their demands were anything but peaceful. They demanded that all fortified regions of Hungary be handed over to Ferdinand in exchange for peace. Ibrahim Pasha, Suleiman's trusted Grand Vizier, scoffed at their audacity. "Why not ask for Istanbul as well?" he replied mockingly. The negotiations quickly unraveled, and it became clear that no agreement would be reached. Soon after, Ferdinand boldly declared himself King of Hungary. The Hungarians, however, had elected their own ruler, a local noble named John Zapolya. The region was now in turmoil, and Suleiman knew that he could not leave Hungary in such a fragile state. Determined to reassert his control, Suleiman prepared for another campaign. This time, his objective would not be limited to Hungary. He would press forward to Vienna, the great Habsburg stronghold in the east. Once again, he raised the Horsdale banners and summoned the vast legions of his empire. 100,000 strong, they set out for Europe, with Suleiman at the head and Ibrahim Pasha at his side. On May 10th, 1529, they departed, but the journey proved arduous. Relentless rain plagued the march, turning roads into thick mud. Camels faltered, men fell ill, and even his formidable cannons became mired in the muck. Despite hundreds of men and dozens of beasts straining to move them, many had to be abandoned along the way. It was only on August 18th that they finally reached the Mohacs Plain once more. There, they were met by John Zapolya, the upstart prince whom the Hungarians had elected as their ruler. At least, in this regard, the news was good. Zapolya acknowledged Suleiman as his suzerain and willingly joined forces with the Ottoman army. He had no desire to be crushed by Ferdinand and saw the Ottomans as his only hope. The French ambassador had also arrived, bringing with him 40,000 crowns to support Zapolya in his struggle against the Habsburgs. Together, they advanced on Buda, which Ferdinand had occupied in the absence of Ottoman forces. The siege of Buda was brief, lasting only 6 days. The Janissaries stormed the city with relentless precision. Suleiman, ever mindful of his subjects, forbade the town from being sacked. The Hungarians were now his people, and he would not have them suffer. Yet, discipline could only go so far. While the Hungarians were largely spared, many Austrians were taken as slaves, and Ottoman swords eagerly sought out Habsburg necks. With Buda secured and Zapolya installed as its ruler, the path to Vienna was open. On September 27th, Suleiman's vast army reached the city. Inside its walls stood 20,000 defenders, far fewer than his own force, which exceeded 100,000 men. Even the disparity in firepower was evident. The defenders had 72 cannons, while Suleiman's forces boasted 300. Ferdinand himself had abandoned Vienna, fleeing to Bohemia. Victory seemed assured. But this time, the European powers recognized the gravity of the Ottoman threat. Charles sent his finest mercenaries to bolster the city's defenses. Even the Protestant German princes, who normally opposed the Habsburgs, set aside their differences to unite against a common enemy. Worse still, the rains had given Vienna ample time to prepare. The walls had been repaired, supplies stockpiled, and even homes outside the city had been raised to prevent them from providing cover to the attackers. There would be no easy conquest here. The battle began in earnest. From his command tent, Suleiman watched as his men surged toward the walls in relentless waves. Each assault was a brilliant display of military might. The Janissaries and other troops adorned in the vibrant colors of their ranks, clashing against the cold gray walls of Vienna. But the defenders held firm. Time and again, the Ottomans were pushed back. Sappers dug beneath the walls, hoping to undermine them, while reckless Austrian sorties were crushed, their severed heads displayed before the gates as a grim warning. Still, Vienna refused to fall. On October 14th, the Ottomans launched their final, most desperate assault. His men fought with a fury born of frustration and determination, cutting down defenders as they advanced through a breach. They neared the crest of the breach, only for the defenders to rally and drive them back. It was over. As snow began to fall, Suleiman knew he had lost this battle. He declared the campaign a success nonetheless, distributing gifts to his commanders and paying his soldiers as if they had won. Publicly, he claimed he had never intended to take Vienna, only to challenge Charles and Ferdinand to battle. Privately, however, he knew the truth. This was the farthest his empire would ever reach into Europe. The march back to Istanbul was a bitter one. The Austrians harassed their retreat. The weather was unrelenting, and disease took its toll. But even as his men suffered, Suleiman's mind was burdened by a different kind of torment. For generations, it had been law in the Ottoman Empire that upon the ascension of a new sultan, all his brothers would be executed to prevent civil war. If Suleiman were to die, his sons would inevitably fight for the throne. The loser would not only lose power, but his life as well. He loved his sons deeply, even Mustafa, his firstborn, who at times had been a challenge. But Mustafa was the clear heir. He was loved by the people and the army. He was also the most capable of Suleiman's children. But if Mustafa ascended, the sons of Hurrem, the woman he loved most, would perish. As the warm breeze of the Bosphorus brushed against his face, Suleiman pondered his fate. He had built an empire unlike any before it, but now he found himself ensnared by his own laws, his own traditions. He could not see a way out. Lost in thought, he wandered the palace grounds, seeking solace in the echoes of the past. He wondered if any Roman emperor had ever faced such dilemmas, but they were long gone, and he, the great Sultan of the Ottomans, was left alone with his thoughts. And even that realization brought its own kind of sorrow.